attendance?
It has.
And roll call will show that all 5 board members are present, as well as our 2 student representatives. At this time, I invite you to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, at this time, Dr. Kiltz, any communication that you'd like to share?
We have a couple of items to share with the board and with the community. First of all, the middle school had their play this past Friday, and the students did a tremendous job. It was sort of a satire on Shakespeare, and while I think the middle school students who came over to watch it Friday morning may not have understood everything in it, by the end of the play, I think they were all laughing and enjoying some of the antics up on the stage. So congratulations to the students who were involved in that production. This week is Teacher Appreciation Week. On behalf of the board and administration, I thank all staff who work in any capacity with our students. You're a gift, and we appreciate your commitment to our families. Your tireless efforts and relationships inspire and support each and every student every single day. So thank you, and certainly enjoy the week. AP exams are being held this week and next at Greendale High School, so we wish all students taking those AP exams good luck through the next couple of weeks. A community conversation on welcoming diversity is scheduled tomorrow, May 7th, in the high school multipurpose room beginning at 6:30 p.m. The event is hosted by Greendale Schools and facilitated by the Zeidler Center. All are welcome to attend. Greendale High School is hosting a Be the Match bone marrow drive on Wednesday, May 8th from 5 to 7 p.m. in rooms 103, 105 at the high school. The event is being held in honor of Greendale High School student Jordan Schindler, who was diagnosed recently with acute myeloid leukemia, AML. Jordan needs a bone marrow or stem cell transplant to fight his disease, and to date, there is no direct match for him. To become a bone marrow donor, interested parties between ages of 18 and 44 may register by visiting Jordan's Journey event on May 8th. Potential donors can also register online by texting Jordan's Journey to 61474 or by visiting join.bethematch.org /Jordan's Journey and following the prompts to register. There is no cost for adults ages 18 to 44 to register, so we encourage people to check, see if you're a match, and even if you're not a match for Jordan, you may be a match for someone else who's on the bone marrow transplant list. So, and we certainly wish Jordan and Jordan's family all the best. Lots of thoughts and prayers to Jordan as he goes through this. The annual Art Gallery Night will be held at the middle school on May 8th, beginning at 5:30 p.m. 3rd through 5th grade students will participate in a spring concert on May 14th at 6:30 p.m. at the high school. 3rd through 5th grade elementary students will participate in a spring concert at the high school at 6:30 p.m. on the following dates. And these concerts include choir, band, and orchestra. On May 14th, College Park at 6:30 p.m. May 15th, Highland View at 6:30 p.m. and May 16th, Canterbury School at 6:30 p.m. And finally, 7th grade students will leave on May 15th for the annual outdoor education program. So we hope they have tremendous weather for that program.
Thank you, Dr. Kiltz. Any other communication from the board? All right, at this time, I will invite any comments from visitors. And again, I remind you, if you'd like to speak, come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we limit comments to 3 minutes at a time.
My name is Laura Miller, and I'm at 5234 Lakeside Drive, and I am here speaking on behalf of PAGE, the group Parents Advocating for Greendale Equity, and for my friends Shanice and Deania. Black female students are disproportionately unfairly disciplined in school settings, given the most harsh discipline compared to other genders and races. And that is exactly what happened here in Greendale School District at the beginning of this school year. It is our hope that this will not happen again, and it is your responsibility, superintendent, school administration, personnel, and school board, your responsibility to ensure you effectively protect and support our students of color from racism and hate speech. Unfortunately, this did not happen back in the beginning of the school year. In fact, because of the Greendale School District's reaction showing racial bias, victim blaming, and institutionalized racism, our group of parents decided to form PAGE, Parents Advocating for Greendale Equity. Our mission is to represent and amplify the voices of those students, parents, and community members who feel they are not adequately heard or respected in Greendale, especially in the public schools, and to help Greendale School District and the community at large to make a priority to embrace its growing diversity, to become more aware of the systemic racism in its past and present, and to become a more welcoming community for all. So here are some of our hopes and dreams for the Greendale School District as we move forward. We hope you remove Shanice's athletic code of conduct violation, which is still on her record. She should not have this on her record. She will be applying for colleges and athletic scholarships, and it should not be there. Also, we hope that official policies on racism and hate speech are carefully reviewed and recrafted. They need to be very clear and explicit and transparent. These updated policies need to be explained to the student body. School administration needs to enforce these policies with consistent discipline for those who use racism and hate speech in order to hurt our students of color. We also hope that when a video is cited as evidence as to why a student is suspended, that a parent can see this evidence in a timely manner and without being forced to get a lawyer in order to see the video evidence. We hope that Greendale Police, the school resource officer, and Greendale School District counselors do not tell students of color to just ignore hate speech that has been directed at them, which is what happened at the beginning of the school year. Students who are bullied are never told just to ignore it. We hope you train these first responders and give them real tools that can be used to protect and empower victims of racist acts and hate speech. We hope you hire teachers of color as close to the percentage of our students of color who attend Greendale School District, about 20%. This alone would transform the culture at our school right away. We hope that you continue the reconciliation process with those parents and students you have deeply hurt by your words and actions over the past many months. Please note that there are parents you have hurt also by your lack of action and communication as well. We hope you teach all students how to deal with incidents of racism in Greendale School District in order for all students to help protect our students who are being targeted, empower our students with tools to stand up to racists and enforce appropriate consequences. Meaningful training needs to happen for all our students. We hope that you train yourselves, Superintendent, Greendale School District Administration, and School Board, in becoming knowledgeable in recognizing and combating racial bias, victim blaming, and institutionalized racism. And finally, we hope that you can help us want to trust you with our children. Show us with meaningful words and actions that we can trust you to respond effectively and appropriately to incidences of racism and hate speech. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And I invite you and your organization to the community conversation tomorrow evening. And the other thing that I will say is at a public forum like this, it's not appropriate for us to respond to student discipline issues. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Heather Godley. I live at 5331 Millbank Road in Greendale. And I just wanted to talk to you today a little bit about impact versus intent, because quite honestly, it wasn't something that I was ever taught as a white person, but it was really helpful to me as I continue to strive to learn how to be anti-racist. The common definition of someone who's racist is a person who consciously doesn't like people of color. I'm sure that we all know someone who fits this description, but it's really only one limited definition of racism. This common understanding of racism immediately puts well-intentioned white people on the defensive, which often stands in the way of progress when we feel like we're being called immoral when we're charged with furthering racism. Robin DiAngelo gives us a better definition of racism. It's a group's collective bias backed by legal authority and institutional control. The negative impact of racism comes not primarily from people wearing white hoods or spray painting swastikas, but from the actions of people who would honestly never identify themselves as racist, but whose acts have racist consequences nevertheless. This is an important distinction in two ways. First, through understanding this definition, we can move beyond that feeling that anytime we're charged with racism, that it's a personal attack. Because whether or not we intended to be racist isn't really the issue. It's not whether we're racist as people, it's whether our actions have racist impact. By listening to affected people about how our consequences impact them, we can make better progress than by protesting that we're not one of those horrible people. We can then begin to move on. Even more important, however, is that we need to look beyond our defensiveness into the larger structures that keep racism in place, even if, and especially if, we as white people don't realize it. In some ways, as the Alberta Civil Liberties Research Center phrases it, intentionality is irrelevant. It's the effect or impact of the action on the target person or group that is to be considered and takes precedence. And as Jamie Utt writes, this is where listening becomes vitally important, for our privilege can often shield us from understanding the impact of our actions. If the impact of our actions is the furthering of oppression, then that's all that matters. So I'm very glad to hear that there are more opportunities for us to listen to the voices of people of color and students of color, and I hope that we can all continue moving forward in that area. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from visitors this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll continue on with our agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, please.
My name is Karen Francisco. I live in Greenfield, but I don't know if you need my address, 4936 South 65th. I didn't expect to speak, but I did want to attend this meeting because I live in Greenfield. I'm very connected with Greendale, the bubble of Milwaukee, and I've been very concerned and upset about what has happened since September. And I have participated just recently in what is called a white privilege class, and kind of reevaluated my whole situation. This class was published in 2017. It's available online, and since I wasn't prepared to be here, I don't have anything to enter into the minutes or whatever, but I could supply the superintendent with the website. You can download all of the pages. It has videos that are really eye-opening and expose your inherent experience, your things you've learned, things you need to unlearn, and it would be a great resource for the board and for the teachers and resource people that you have in the community, and I would highly recommend it. So if maybe after this session I could get your email address and I could email you the information and peruse it, at least just start out with the video links that they have. They're very short. They're very short and they're maybe 5 minutes long, so it doesn't take a lot of time to become aware. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments.
And I'm going to have Kitty Goyette touch base with you real quickly. Ma'am? Kitty Goyette's going to touch base with you to get your information so we can touch base.
All right, any other comments from visitors this evening? All right, then at this time we'll continue on. So one of the reasons why we're all here is we have a number of students and staff who we'd like to recognize for their achievements. And the first group that we are going to be recognizing is our national merit finalists from the high school class of 2019. So every year, National Merit Scholarship Corporation was established in 1955, a time in which there was a concern that the United States was lagging behind in the Cold War scientific race, but the public was indifferent to a rewarding intellectual accomplishment. And so in response, the National Merit Scholarship Program was founded to identify and honor scholastically talented American youth and to encourage them to develop their abilities to the fullest. Through this nationwide competition, national merit scholarships are awarded to program finalists, and special scholarships are awarded to other high-performing participants who meet corporate sponsors' eligibility criteria. So this evening, we have 2 finalists and 1 commended student. So I will recognize all of them. At the end, we will invite them up for a photo opportunity. So the first student that we'd like to recognize is Andrew Lynch. He is a commended student, and out of 1.6 million entrants, his score was in the top 50,000, which equates to the top 3%. While a student here in Greendale High School, he's part of the band and orchestra and part of the drum line. He's also been part of the National Honor Society, a member of the high school bowling team, and this fall, he'll be going to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, where he'll be studying aerospace engineering. And one of his best memories of Greendale High School was participating on the tennis team. So we'd like to congratulate Andrew Lynch. The next student that we'd like to recognize is Ray Arndorfer, and he's sitting behind the desk because he also helps us with the technology here at our board meetings. So Ray was a finalist. So again, out of over 1.5 million participants, his score was one of the best in the top 7,500 of those taking the test. So that's in the top 0.5%. So in the past 4 years, Ray has also been a member of the high school band and the National Honor Society, and he will be going to college in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to the University of Alabama, where he'll be studying math and computer science. And one of his most favorite memories while here at the high school has been a member of the marching band. So congratulations, Ray. And the third senior that we'd like to recognize this evening is Andrew Widlars. So again, he is a finalist. So out of those 1.5 million entrants, his score was one of the best in the top 0.5%. Andrew was also part of the band, National Honor Society, and he will be going to the UW-Madison, where he will be studying materials science and engineering. And he too said one of his best memories at Greendale High School was being in the marching band. So congratulations, Andrew. At this time, we'd like to invite the 3 of you up for a photo, and we've got certificates for you. Okay, and then we will be recognizing Ms. Teresa Kruschke-Alfonso. So Ms. Kruschke is a high school Spanish teacher and world language curriculum facilitator for the K-12 in the district. And this past year, she was named the CAP Adjunct of the Year for 2019. And CAP is our Cooperative Academic Partnership Program with the UW system. So the Adjunct of the Year Award highlights exemplary capped adjuncts in the area of academic content areas, professional interactions and liaisons with students, willingness to give of their time freely to impact CAP students, and alignment of curriculum, and pedagogical expertise in delivering college-level materials to our high school students. So Teresa received her award at the CAP Spring Workshop on Thursday, April 11th at UW Oshkosh, and this evening we'd like to recognize you and thank you for your work here at the high school.
They just asked if I wanted to say something. I wanted to say thank you for Greendale offering me and supporting me always as the facilitator, looking at the programs, our high school in the support of world languages, and for having really great students. It makes my job a lot easier. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, sitting in our front row of the public is we have 6 students who advanced to the state forensics tournament. So at this time, we'd like to recognize them for medaling in their category, as well as senior Michaela Saranick received an additional special award for earning gold at state all 4 years. So these students put a lot of time and effort into refining their pieces and delivering their best performances over the season. So I'd like to congratulate and offer commendations to each of the students, and I'll read their names and as well as the category that they participated in. So first of all, we had Mary Haag in Farrago. She received a gold medal. Hasala Jamaluddin participated in poetry, where she received a silver award. As I mentioned, Michaela Saranac also participated in poetry, and she received a gold this year, and this is her 4th gold in a row. So congratulations. Lucy Ramsey participated in prose, where she received the gold medal. Give her Another prose participant was Abigail Graber, who received a bronze this year. And Alicia Garcia, who competed in solo acting humorous and received a gold. Coach, is there anything that you want to add?
They just did such a wonderful job. They worked so hard. In addition to being amazing forensics participants, are all really lovely, kind students as well. So it's a joy to work with them.
Well, congratulations.
You all can come on up. Coach, you can join.
now? All right, and then the next group of students that we're going to be recognizing, and hopefully you'll be able to stick around and hear their report. These are our exchange students. So these are our students that come from abroad and are participating with AFS. And this year, Greendale High School was fortunate to have 2 high school students. The first one was from Tunisia, Amen El Hachi. And his host family was Mr. and Mrs. Smith, so Alexandra and Jody Smith. I don't know if they're here, but thank you, and we'll hear your report later this evening. And then the second student from Germany was Lynn Berkeben, and her host family was Eric and Holly Miller. So this evening, both Lynn and Amen will deliver a presentation in which they will include some background information and details of their past year here, both at the school and with their families. We'd like to recognize you and offer you a commendation.
Mr. Lotus, you want to join us? You're dressed too nicely to not join us.
Join them.
And as I mentioned, we'll be hearing from our exchange students in a few moments. So next on the agenda is approval of the regular meeting minutes of April 22nd.
I move approval of the regular meeting minutes from, where was it, April 22nd, as approved, or as outlined in agenda item number 5.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 22nd. Any further discussion? Then I call for a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And I am yes, motion carries. Next on the agenda, we've got some personnel items. So we will be appointing and approving the new associate principal here at the Greendale High School, as well as the new director of business services, who will be replacing Mr. Hayeski, who will be leaving us at the end of May. Any comments from administration or any questions from the board?
I just will let the board and community know we have 2 phenomenal administrators who are going to be joining us. We have Jonathan Mitchell, who's coming to us from St. Francis, where he's served as the Director of Business Services there for 6 years. So we're excited to have him filling Todd's shoes moving forward. They're big shoes to fill, but I think Jonathan's going to do just fine in filling them. And then in replacing Miss Derrick, who's moving on to Canterbury Elementary School, we have Mr. Christopher Del Ponte, who's joining us from Waukesha School District, where he did a lot of work with the STEM program and with a career academy at Waukesha West High School. So when it comes to moving us forward with some of the career pathway work, project-based learning work across our system, he's going to be tremendous in helping us facilitate some of that work moving forward. So we're excited to have both these individuals on our leadership team.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I move approval of the Associate Principal and Director of Business Services for personnel in agenda item 6. Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve personnel. Any further discussion? Then I call for a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And I am yes, motion carries. So next on our agenda, and thank you for sticking around, we will be hearing from our 2 exchange students. So we introduced them earlier. So at this time, I invite you both to this table right here, where we've got some microphones so that we can make sure that everyone can hear you. So as I mentioned, we have a student from Germany and a student from Tunisia here this year.
So hello everyone, my name is Eman and I'm the exchange student from Tunisia. So today I'll be presenting, like it's gonna be quick, but it's gonna be fun. Hopefully it's gonna be fun. We're gonna start by our personal background so you can know like from where we came from, like some information about our personal life and stuff like that. So Ling's gonna start.
Yeah, my name is my name is Lynn. I'm from Hamburg. That's in Germany. That's in the north. And in Germany, my family consists of my mom, my stepmom, my dad, my stepdad, and my little brother Elam. So it's kind of a big family. Here I'm staying with Miss Miller and her family. She's a health teacher in middle school. And these are some pictures from my city in Germany. It's the second largest city in Germany, so it's really big. And yeah, that's another picture.
So my turn. So I'm Eman, I'm from Tunisia as I mentioned. I'm 18 years old. So I came from Zaghouin. It's in Tunisia. It's like 1 hour far away from the city, from the capital, which is Tunis. My city is like, it's not as big as the capital, but we have like really nice sightseeing, like the mountains, and like people know it for the food especially, and for hiking as well. So I'm hosted by the Smiths, and my host sister goes to Greendale as well. She's Taryn Smith, and she's a sophomore here. But my family, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. I only have a younger sister. All my other siblings are older than me. My dad is an agricultural engineer who works for the ministry. And my mother is a teacher. She works in middle school. She's a middle school teacher for science subjects. And all my other brothers are whether studying or working. My elder brother is an engineer. He works in the capital. My other brother is a computer science engineer who works in Budapest, Hungary. My sister is a nurse, and she works in Germany. Yeah, I think. Oh, so now we're going to discuss why we came here, you know, why we decided to be an exchange student in the first place. How do I start? Okay. So the main reason that I decided to be an exchange student in the first place is to just experience another culture. So we hear a lot about, even from people that not like the same community or in the same country you live in, there's other differences and there's other cultures. And especially the American culture, we hear about it a lot through like social media, through TV shows and those kind of stuff. So it was really interesting for me to see like what is the differences, how people are different than us even though we live in the same world. So I want to discover them by myself and live the experience.
And we came here to build lasting international friendships. It's really nice to find friends from another country, and I'm pretty sure that I will keep in touch with them, and they're probably going to visit me next year, so I'm really looking forward to that.
One other reason is to improve my English skills, because English is not spoken in Tunisia. It's the 3rd language. We take it as in school. So I've been taking English for 5 years now. So it was one of the main reasons, because I like language in general. So one way to improve my English is to speak it and to be in the country that they only speak English. So that's the way, like the best way to practice and really learn the language. So that's why I decided.
And we came here to challenge ourselves. Being an exchange student is really fun, but sometimes it's like really challenging and sometimes frustrating. And yeah, I think it's really cool. But yeah.
We say the life-changing experience as well, because being like literally on your own in a different country, it definitely gonna change your life and the way you see like your perspective of like things and how things work. So it's a life-changing experience.
Now we're going to talk about our experiences. First, I'm going to talk about the places I have seen. I have been in Colorado and Florida. In Colorado, I have been with another exchange student. He's from Italy, and we stayed in Breckenridge, that's near Denver, and we stayed there for like 5 days. And for spring break, we traveled to Florida. We drove all the way down, so it was a really long drive. Yeah, but it was so much fun, and it was such a great time. And things that I like about the US are the people. Everyone is so open-minded and really nice, and everyone is so interested to learn about your culture, and yeah, I really like that. I like the high school. I enjoy all my classes, and I'm in track and field, and it's really nice to meet new people. I also like the holidays. I think it's like nice to experience another way how to celebrate, for example, Christmas. And I like to learn about new traditions, and yeah, it's fun. Things that surprised me about the US are, for example, that it's the same schedule every day. So you have every day the same classes. In Germany, every class is like 2 hours long, so each day is different. Another thing that surprised me about the US is that everything is so far away from each other, so you need a car to go grocery shopping or something like that. And in Germany, I can just go to the next store and it's like 5 minutes away. So I'm still trying to get used to that. And another thing that surprised me about the US is the relationships between students and teachers. In Germany, for example, the teachers are not allowed to call us by our first names. So I have to call them by their last names, and they have to do the same. And here it's like way different. So yeah, it was interesting to see that.
I can't agree more with what she said. So the places that I've seen or I've been to, Chicago, Illinois, it's actually my favorite place because it's super close. I've been there like 8 times now. I went like last weekend. I was in Orlando, Florida. I went to DC. I went there for a workshop. And I went to Indianapolis, Indiana, and actually I went to Virginia too. I didn't put there. And the things that I tried for the first time I enjoyed. So, being an exchange student, you want to try new things that we don't really have. So the first thing and my best thing, I guess, was skiing, because skiing is not a thing in Tunisia. We don't really have snow. It just snows in like really high mountains, which I've never seen it before. Like we don't go there. So that was actually a really good experience. I went twice skiing. And another thing is taking a sociology class. So we don't really have those kind of classes in Tunisia. We have like science, like any kind of like formal classes, not like university classes. So my sociology class was perfect. I really liked it because it's my thing. Like we're talking about society and how culture. And it helped me even to view the American culture in a different way, because that's why we study. And of course, the cheese curds and custard. Who doesn't? So the things I was involved with is the marching band. I was with the marching band. I went to state, I went to nationals, and I went to march in Disney streets. I was in the theater running crew for both shows, Harvey and Newsies. And that's the picture from our last show, Newsies. That's me, if you can see me. And I was the French teacher, Ed, because I am fluent in French. So it was really good experience. I really enjoyed that class because I saw how people are really interested in learning a different language. I got really to help them. So I felt like kind of doing something in my life. I was in the Campus Life Club as well. I liked the games so much. I like how they come together and they discuss stuff. So that was a cool experience. I was with Teens with Impact for the first semester. I liked how teens are trying to make an actual impact, and I love all their programming and stuff. That was amazing. And I recently found the international club in the school, which that's the highlight of my year actually. And people actually came. Those are people from the club. So it's actually fun, and I have a picture here. So that's our first meeting. So it was actually nice. And I got selected to go to a civil education workshop in DC, and I got to spend a week in DC and to meet the senators of Wisconsin and discuss about the exchange programs. And because I'm a sponsored student, so they kind of relate to those kind of stuff. So that was a really cool experience, and I got the amazing magic of DC and all the stuff happening down there. So yes. Now we're gonna go to the reflection.
Um, yeah, during our exchange year, we have changed a lot. Um, for example, we got more confident and we get out of our comfort zone, especially on our first day of high school. That was really exciting to like talk to people. And I'm studying English since 2 or 3 years in school, so I couldn't really speak the language, and yeah, that was sometimes kind of frustrating, but it was fun. And we got more independent. We have to face our challenges sometimes by ourselves, and we are not with our family at home in our country, and yeah. Then we gained more personal growth. And we got more open-minded because we actually have to like go to people and talk to them, and yeah, I think we both changed a lot.
Things I've learned. My English go way better because I don't really get to speak it, as I mentioned before. How to face challenges. I would say my life was kind of boring. I don't really get challenges back in Tunisia because it's the usual stuff. You know, you face them like first year of high school, first year of middle school, and that's all. So I really wanted like to be prepared for the professional life, because it's like there's more challenges in that. So we learned how to do that because we faced lots of challenges here, definitely trying to adapt and to adjust to all the changes, and appreciate the little things. Like when I think backwards, like we've taken things for granted, lots of things that we just don't think about it. And I actually appreciate when I came here, you will notice the little things that happen, and that's nostalgia for me. It's like things that makes you like really happy, but you've never noticed before. So yeah. What's next?
When I have to go back to Germany, I have 2 more years of high school left. So I'm not sure what I want to be when I'm done with high school, but I would like to be a nurse. I would like to do something to help people. So I'm probably trying to find a scholarship to study abroad because I really enjoy my year here. And yeah, but I'm not sure.
Me as well. I have 2 years more of high school when I go back because this year's a gap year for me doesn't count. In my senior year, I'll definitely apply for universities back in the US. I'll apply for the Ivy Leagues because I have like lots of friends who got in and they give really good scholarships. Columbia in the first place because I want to study in New York. And I'll definitely keep being an active member as an alumni, like an exchange student, because we are expected like to take our experience, what we learned here, and apply them to our own countries and share our experience as well. So definitely I'll be doing that and keep busy like always. So questions, if you have any questions.
Thank you for coming this evening. I think Greendale schools are richer to have students like you coming and spending the whole year. It was very interesting to see what surprised you and what were some memories. Any comments or questions from any of the board?
How do the clubs and sports differ from your home country compared to what you saw here at Greendale? We would call them extracurriculars.
Okay. So in Tunisia is a little bit different. We don't really believe in extracurriculum because we focus more on the academic phase of studies. So it's really rare. In my school, definitely I was the founder of the 2 clubs, the only 2 clubs in the whole high school. So people tend more to focus on like the studies, the actual classes, and forget to do those kind of stuff. Because I would understand, because we study from 8 till 12 and then 2 till 6, so it's the whole day studying. So people don't have really to do extracurricular activities and join clubs. So for me, it was amazing. It was like I have all the whole afternoon for myself and to join clubs and do what I enjoy. So yeah.
Yeah, in Germany it's kind of the same. We don't really have school sports and activity. In school we just have like our classes that we have to do. And if we want to like do sports, we have to find clubs outside of the school.
Right.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming tonight. Both of you are extremely fluent in English, so I'm very impressed. And you said that you were not even speaking the language very much at the beginning of the year, so I just want to say hats off to you. Very, very nice. You've really shared a lot with us tonight, and it was very easy to understand. I was just wondering what your biggest challenge was when you came here. I know you said it was stepping outside of your comfort zone a little. What was that biggest challenge for you, and how did you overcome it, if you don't mind sharing? Either one of you.
Okay, I can start. I would say making friends was kind of hard for me because here people, especially maybe it's specific to Greendale, like they go together to the same middle school, same high school, and you know, like the groups already formed, and it's hard to get integrated, like for people who don't really know each other. But for me, I overcome it. I mean, I made friends. I even went to different high schools, and I still have friends with them. I went to prom with them too. So at first it's easy. It's not easy. I mean, it's hard because people don't know you and they need to get used to you first. And for me, it's like I had my own groups back in Tunisia. So you have your own friends, and then a sudden like you're alone. So that was like I would say the hardest challenge.
Yeah, I think for me it's the same. Like when I came here, I couldn't really speak English, and when I actually started talking about my culture and about the country I come from, people got really interested, and yeah, that was like really great that everyone is so nice and so interested to learn learn something about your culture.
Thank you. Any other comments? Again, thank you for sharing your experience with us tonight, and I'm glad there was an overall positive experience. It sounded like you had some great opportunities at the high school, so thank you for sharing that.
Yep. Of course, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, at this time, we'll continue on. Next item on our agenda, we'll be hearing the annual social emotional wellness report.
I just have to bring up my slideshow here.
Absolutely.
Hopefully everything will cooperate. There it is. All right, so hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at the report that I wrote up, but I just pulled out a few highlights from the report to go over with you tonight, and then certainly take any questions or other feedback that you have. So social emotional learning. Well, there we go. So what is social emotional learning? This definition really explains it pretty succinctly. This is taken from, you'll find this in a number of places, the Department of Public Instruction, the Castle organization, and so on. Sometimes we refer to the social emotional learning skills as soft skills, but the term soft skills almost downplays the importance of these skills. They're essential to success within schools, the workplace, our students' personal lives. And when we think about, as we do in Greendale, educating the whole child, they are critical to that responsibility of educating the whole child. One of probably the most well-known and respected organizations around the work of SEL is CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. What CASEL has done, as you can see by their model, they've taken social emotional learning skills and they've grouped them into the 5 domains of self-awareness and self-management. So sort of that self piece. How do I recognize the feelings in myself? How do I maintain my self-regulation, for example? And then the other piece is, how do I interact with others? What are my skills around social awareness and building relationships? And ultimately, the ultimate goal is that students or adults will make responsible decisions when those things are integrated together. Each of those domains is broken down into smaller components as well.
So what Wisconsin has done, they took a little bit different approach. Many other states really have embraced fully the castle model and those domains. Wisconsin, way back in 2003, developed something called the Wisconsin Model Early Learning Standards, or we call them the WIMLs. And that's for early childhood students. So I believe it's ages birth to 6 or 7. And those were in place for a very long time in Wisconsin. In that regard, our state was well ahead of the game for those youngest students. The Department of Public Instruction took those standards, and then after those standards were developed, the Madison School District developed their own competencies, learning standards, and they expanded that up through 12th grade. So it's what Wisconsin did with a work team was they took those early learning standards and the Madison, and they put those together and they developed the Wisconsin SEL competencies. So the Wisconsin competencies, they use the framework that the early learning standards used, which was really around just 3 domains instead of the 5 from Castle. So emotional development, self-concept, and social competence. Those existed since 2003. But through this work team from DPI, they've now taken those and they've expanded that up through adulthood, and they've broken them down into grade bands, 6 grade bands, and within each of those grade bands, there are, I believe, 24 competencies. They purposely, and this is actually, that picture is a picture of the booklet that has everything included in it. And they purposely called them competencies rather than standards because they are optional for districts. Unlike the state standards, which we are expected to implement, competencies are voluntary. So if it's voluntary, why are we doing it? Why are we focusing on that? First of all, I think first and foremost, when we talk about the mental health framework in Wisconsin, which we have talked about before, it's part of a complete mental health framework, starting at that very beginning level that we do for all students, developing those competencies as universal instruction, building on that solid foundation to help our students develop into healthy adults in all respects. Another reason for SEL is there's research to show that it has a positive impact on students. 11% increase in academic achievement. 59% of managers have indicated in surveys that they look for those soft skills in their new hires. About $11 return for every dollar invested in social emotional learning development. And 93% of teachers reported as very or fairly important in schools. So there's a lot of positive impact from SEL. We also have had some areas of concern in Greendale, not unlike other districts around the country. This is data that was shared in the past around our school, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and some of those areas that were of concern when we completed that survey last year. The same was true of the middle school YRBS. We had some areas that we were concerned about, students who are feeling anxious, not feeling safe, students who are having suicidal ideation, and so on. At the elementary level, we don't use something like the YRBS, but from our student engagement survey, the comment or the question, in this school, students are kind to each other, was one of the lowest ranking items. So that's another reason we want to improve those skills. And then some anecdotal concerns, the recent racial incidents that we've had, comments that have been made, videos that have surfaced, indicate to us that our students are not always able to make those responsible decisions. So what can we do to improve that? We've also had a lot of, over the years, an increased request for pupil services support, pupil services staff increases to deal with the intensity, the number and the intensity of students who are coming with some rather significant social, emotional challenges, mental health related. So what can we do before they get to that point to help resolve those things for them, help them resolve those issues? So what have we been doing? We started out with some professional development. Now we have staff who know a lot about social emotional learning. We have people who that's their area of expertise, and we have people who this was kind of a new concept and that was not something that they had heard directly of. So we started out in the fall with a universal training by an individual named Jim Vetter, just on what is SEL. Let's develop that universal understanding of social emotional learning. We also created a leadership team that is representative of all 5 schools, as well as the health department, and we have a parent representative and members of the district office administrative team. The goal of that team, which will continue next year as well, is we're working on developing a coordinated, comprehensive approach to SEL within the schools and bringing that on into the community as well. And we've been meeting monthly, and much of what we've done this year is we have shared what's currently being done. We've looked for areas of alignment. Where are we already aligned? And where are there opportunities for alignment? Those have been some key pieces of what we've done this year. Some of the things that are new to us this year is addressing the unconscious bias. We had a workshop on addressing unconscious bias just recently in April, where we brought in nurturing diversity partners to examine our own thinking and understanding of marginalization of individuals historically and how that impacts perceptions and attitudes even today. We did that, and along with that, we provided some training in a framework called Speak Up at School. The other thing that we're very excited about is sources of strength, and that's something that we've started at the high school. And what sources of strength does is each of the pieces of that pie represents a source of strength. For example, one source of strength may be someone's family, healthy activities, spirituality. I said healthy activities. I won't try to recite all of them. Positive friends, for example. And how do students or adults, but how do we use those strengths to help us be resilient and healthy? And how can we build upon those strengths to have even more resilience and strength? It started out as a suicide prevention program, but it's really much broader than that. Has a positive impact on really all students. I'm going to show you a clip of something that they hopefully. So our student, it's very much peer-led through adult advisors' help, and they're going to be reading what would you call that, girls? It's their mission statement. It's their mission statement, and they do it in a very unique way.
We are sources of strength.
We are a group of diverse students and adults from many different corners and cultures of our school and community.
We believe that life has ups and downs.
That all of us will go through good times and tough times.
Our mission is to ensure that during the rough times,
no one gets so overwhelmed or hopeless
that they want to give up.
Our mission is to spread hope,
help,
and strength
into every corner of our community.
Our mission is to help students and staff
turn to their strengths
and their supports
that are all around.
We are connectors to help and strength.
Our mission recognizes
that a voice has great power,
and we use it to break the silence when someone is struggling,
and to connect them to the help
they need and deserve.
We spread hope
by focusing on stories of strength rather than on stories of trauma.
We know our most powerful impact
comes from our personal actions,
conversations,
and messages that use our music,
our art, our writing,
our activities,
our social media,
our culture,
and our voice.
This gives life to our efforts.
We are sources of strength.
We are sources of strength.
So that was one of the first activities they've done, one of the very first activities the Sources of Strength peer leaders did. I think that Sources of Strength is comprehensive enough that at some point next year it would be great to highlight that and have students come and tell you about some of their firsthand experiences of it. What's next? District-wide, some of the work that we will be doing is we will be continuing to understand the learning progressions of SEL, so really work around those Wisconsin competencies and becoming more familiar with those, as well as the pedagogy of SEL. What are appropriate strategies to move students from one learning progression to the next? We will be looking at social-emotional learning assessment tools. How do we measure how our students are doing and how we are improving those outcomes? We also know that project-based learning has many components of social-emotional learning skills and will be a very important part of the work that we do in helping our students develop those and apply. In particular, it's an opportunity to apply those social-emotional learning skills. So we'll be exploring how those two integrate. Prior to the end of next school year, we will have reviewed and begun piloting some SEL-specific curriculum at the elementary level. Middle school, they will be implementing Sources of Strength. They're planning to kick that off in October of next year. And they have also investigated an intervention that helps to improve upon students' social-emotional learning for those students who are struggling called Collaborative Proactive Solutions. There's a group of middle school staff who are going to a training this summer. High school will continue to expand the Sources of Strength. They'll be developing more peer leaders and continuing that work. And in the community, I think one of the things that we'll be looking at is there a way for us, or what are some ways that we can move this into the community? For example, not to say that this would happen, but one of the things we could explore is Sources of Strength is something that could be used it's not designed just for schools. It's designed for churches and youth groups and other community organizations. So would that be something that any other agencies in our community would be interested in? The health department has done quite a bit around teaching some of the mental health frameworks and suicide prevention, so continuing that relationship with them to do some of that work as well are just some of the things that we have in mind for moving forward. So that's a snapshot of a lot of work that's been done. Do you have questions?
Before we get questions from the board, Annie or Emma, any thoughts based upon some of your participation and experience with this?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to say just because we still are in the really early implementation stages of Sources of Strength. So it's hard to speak on any sort of long-term student wellness impacts as of right now. I think a really positive thing about Sources of Strength is when you go there, like, you really see that they've brought people in from a lot of different social circles. Part of the goal was to have some peer leaders that are connected to the majority of the school and to really get that impact out there by doing that, which is really cool. And in spending time in that group, you really get to meet and experience or hear the experiences of people who you wouldn't necessarily have classes with or wouldn't necessarily be in the same extracurriculars as. So that was really cool. We've missed a lot of school for it, and it's not easy to really bring those experiences as my experience from a peer leader standpoint. It's not really easy to bring those experiences to the entire school quite yet, but that's definitely something that we've been talking to our staff leaders about, and it's kind of being reformed and we're taking our experiences from this year and really taking that as learning and really building on it. And I think that's another unique thing about this program is you have a lot of really dedicated staff leaders. So we really know that it's not something that's going to graduate out, or it's not really something that's going to stay kind of complacent because that's the way it's always been. We have a lot of really dedicated staff members who have put a lot of time and effort into this program because obviously the intent of it is really impactful.
Also, another thing that I have seen from this program is that it's just brought the conversation into the classroom a lot more than it was before. For example, in my math class, we had a announcement at the beginning of the school day about Sources of Strength Week last week. And a couple of kids were just like, what's going on? Like, what is Sources of Strength? Like, what are we even doing? Why are there eggs around the school? And so that kind of gave the peer leaders in the room the opportunity to be like, this is what Sources of Strength is. We're here, like, if you have any questions or if you want to kind of have an active role in Sources of Strength, or the planning of it and everything like that. So that's something that I've really seen the positive effects from. Something that I think we all want to work on for next year and like building this program is really digging deeper into the different programs that other schools have done and the feedback that those programs have gotten from the student perspective, because right now we're really just kind of getting the word out and making sure that people can identify the name, but digging deeper into the mental health impact I think is going to be really important for next year and the end of this year. Yeah.
There's also in the the April Pioneer Outlook, there's an article that some of the students wrote about Sources of Strength, so you might find that interesting.
We can get a copy of that. Sure.
Yeah.
So I guess it's not clear to me how many students are reached through Sources of Strength?
Well, right, 100% of the students will be reached through Sources of Strength. About eventually, I believe that we would be at, it's about 10% of the student body will eventually be peer leaders.
Okay. So okay, I guess I'm missing something. So it's the week was mentioned.
I
guess when is this, or how is this being implemented? That's not clear to me.
So what Sources of Strength peer leaders will do is they will create campaigns, and Sources of Strength, the organization, has campaigns for them to implement. Right? I'll pull that up.
But is it correct to say that the time that's been spent has been training those peer leaders so that they understand the program and understand?
It's been both.
Okay.
So the peer leader, the adult advisors had a one-day training on how to be adult advisor, and then the peer leaders had a full day of training. It was pretty intense, I would say, and it was really one of the most amazing experiences of my career, bringing these students from all different groups together to examine their own sources of strength and learn about sources of strength. Then they came back, and about every 2 weeks or so, is there a new campaign about every 2 weeks?
Yeah, so every 2 weeks to a month, there's a different campaign, and we basically, so after our training, our first initiative for this year, as it's like a really new organization, was just kind of getting the word out and making sure that people in not only our social circles but around the school could identify us as peer leaders and know who to turn to for more information, and then also know that this is an available resource if they are struggling and they don't feel comfortable coming to any like adults in their lives or any other resources, that they always have their peers who are here to help. And so basically from there we split up into groups to have different initiatives. So obviously, like in our first training, we had identified our strengths. And so like, for example, I was in the group where we were doing presentations. So when there was an initiative to help advertise for sources of strength and really get its meaning out there, we were the ones who would, like, we presented at lunch, and we would present in front of the school to get more of that information out. So basically for our Spirit Week, we were hoping to do like a larger version of what we did at our one-day training, which was we were examining our own strengths and really focusing on gratitude in our lives and what are some struggles in our lives and how can we use our strengths to really combat that. So we wanted to do that on a higher level with our entire school. So each of the days were kind of distinguished as like one of the days of the little like pie thing. And so each day we were drawing our peers' attention to a different like source of strength in their life. So for example, one of the days was mindfulness, so that it was like a spirit week, and then in the morning, as Emma mentioned, there was time for gratitude, where we just really thought about what we were grateful for, and there were continued initiatives like that where it's just really bringing to mind the strengths in our peers' lives. So that's basically the structure of it so far, if that answers your question, and what we've been up to.
Was that, I think I saw something on that with the chemistry class or something with the
Yes.
Post-its, that was part of this? Okay.
That was an example.
Okay.
That was on Facebook.
So one thing I wanted to point out is I think it's really nice that, and I don't know if you would call this a program, but it's more of a lifestyle, hopefully, that it seems like you're focusing, and the students probably can speak to this most, but you're focusing on those things that are strengths in your life. I think in this day and age with trauma-informed care and so forth, it seems like we've been doing a lot to focus on what's not working.
Yes.
And so it's nice to hear, and maybe from your perspective, has that been a little more empowering for you as students to kind of focus on those things that are working for you?
Yeah, so that's been really empowering for me in my life. For example, I have like anxiety around tests. Like, they make me very nervous, and it's AP exam week. So I finished up my multiple choice today a little bit early, and I started a list of the things I was grateful for, because that's something that we did based off of this training, and that's something that we did in classrooms based off of the announcement. Like, teachers would incorporate that into our classroom, and that's something that really works for me, and I'm just really appreciative to have some of those strategies, especially, I mean, this is the type of thing that really expands beyond high school. Like, I'm always going to be able to come back to these strategies when, I'm struggling, or when I see somebody else in my life struggling.
Something that has been really important for me is seeing how the teachers are involved, because in the past, like, I know with Teens with Impact, our leader of teens is Miss Miller. I love her. But she's not around. It doesn't work at the high school. And so to have so many adult advisors, it just opens up more discussion and makes students feel like not only do the kids know what's going on, but the teachers know what's going on too. And I just think that has been the most important thing for me to see, because we can do as much as we can, but if the teachers aren't on board as well, it doesn't work. So.
Well, and one of the alarming numbers I saw in here was the 30.5% of students either didn't agree strongly or agree that this was a place that they felt they belong. And so I would hope through this experience you're able to think of the things that make you want to belong to. I mean, does that come out of this as well then? Or were you able to even tap in? Did they look at these numbers as well then?
I don't know if the students have seen those or not. We didn't share those specifically with the students. But what I brought up here that you can see, these are the campaigns. That's what they call these initiatives, or these campaigns. One of them is, and I believe that there was some talk about having this We Belong be one of the things that happens at the beginning of the next school year. Knowing that it's difficult for any student when they're starting at high school, and we've heard how it can be even more difficult for students who didn't. We have a fair number of kids who come just at the high school point for 9th grade. And so there will be this whole We Belong campaign. No matter who you are or what your background is or what your interests, you belong here in Greendale. And then Sources of Strength provides some resources and some ideas of steps to running a We Belong campaign. And then those peer leaders will really decide, what do we want this campaign to look like here at Greendale High School, and then they will work to get that out. The adult advisors will guide them, but it is really, wouldn't you say, I'm like, you guys really are doing the work. So.
Yeah, it's student-driven, but I'd also say that the adult advisors are a really great resource. Like, we have a specific adult advisor for each one of our separate groups, and not only does it kind of keep us on task, like, we have kind of a more unified goal, I'd say, than if it was, like, completely student-ran.
Yeah.
But it also just really helps us, like, build it more productively, just because we have that sense of, like, this isn't just a temporary thing.
Right.
Right.
Go ahead.
What's been the reception from the students now that you start to roll this out a little bit?
Well, so that's part of the challenge of having, like, a new organization in general in our school. it's hard to tell beyond the people who I've talked to because obviously when I'm talking to people about sources of strength, it's usually like, oh, what is that? And I have a lot of information, then they know. But we were talking a little bit about this in my individual group. We'd like to kind of gauge more on a whole scale from the student body about what their general thoughts about it are and like how they feel in terms of being informed and things like that. But it's hard to tell on a case-by-case basis because whenever people have questions, I'm like, answer them.
I think right now, as Annie said, we've only really gotten at the surface level of what sources of strength is about. And so to say that this has reached everybody would be an overstatement for sure. And so I just think that that is just something to motivate us and keep us centered for next year's goals. Yeah.
And I think an important piece of reaching all the students is how the peer leaders are selected. So it's a very thoughtful process. And teachers are asked to nominate students, but not just the students that might typically stand out as leaders. So we have students, like our 2 student board members who are very active and involved, but we also have students who aren't. And they may be the ones who have a smaller group of friends, or students who might be one of those students who indicate, I don't feel comfortable in this school, I don't feel that I belong. And they're very thoughtfully picking students based on some of these criteria to get representation from every student group. And some of those students who they are friends with everyone and they have all these connections and they connect various groups. It was really built, they use social networking theory as their process. So it really is a way to maximize our opportunity that every student will be touched in some way because of the way those peer leaders are selected. And then when we grow and we increase the number of peer leaders, that expands that even further.
When does the YRBS take place? Is that an annual thing, or is
it's every 2 years. It used to be, I think districts were able to do it if they wanted to, but now it's really just every 2 years. So it was just given.
Okay.
Or
because it's a state or a national survey?
It's a national survey. Right, the state coordinates it. So it'll be given then this coming fall.
Okay. So there'll be another data point to kind of show.
That's correct.
Even though there's some newness to the SEL program.
Yeah, there can be a delay. I don't know how quickly we get it. There's a bit of a delay before we get those results, but.
And is this kind of comparable data to what we're seeing in other districts? And the reason I ask is I work with universities every day for my work, and one of the biggest areas that people are putting energy, money, effort is around student support services. In every university I talk to, that's the number one thing that comes up with presidents, other groups, around where they're putting energy and money from a university perspective. And so I'm assuming that these numbers are not Greendale centric, that this is pretty typical what we're seeing, which is a little bit scary, to be honest.
Yeah. I agree.
Across the.
I think that our results, and particularly in this last time we did it, were somewhat better than the state average, but we're not great.
Yeah. Well, and then two, I loved some of your commentary, and I just had some thoughts that I wanted to throw out with regards to. I agree with you. I think project-based learning can be an interesting methodology to kind of wrap around this. One of the important parts of project-based learning is reflection, which ties into a lot of the things that we talked about today. But there's also a really interesting program that I got to learn about and work with the creators of from the Stanford D School called Designing Your Life. So they created a program. It's actually the largest elective course taken at Stanford now. And they turned it into not only a Designing Your Life, but a Designing Your Stanford. So they use the design process to create and kind of organize students around the things that they want to do. And it's an adaptive process that you continuously design and you own as a student. So that might be an interesting way to kind of bring that student-centered ownership component to bear. And then you can tie that with some of the more holistic components that seem to be coming out of the sources of strength.
Mm-hmm.
And then just one other observation, was when I looked at the frameworks right now for CASEL, there's a really interesting framework that I've seen adopted pretty strongly in different settings, everything from educational settings to industry settings, military, so on and so forth. There's a Jubilee Center out of actually United Kingdom that created a framework for character formation, and a lot of the things that tied into what I saw in the castle area. And instead of calling it responsible decision making, they call it practical wisdom. They highlight kind of the 4 major buckets of character formation, and then making it intentional around not just focusing on one or the other, because often in schools we focus in on intellectual and performance-based characters, but we don't focus in on moral or civic as much as maybe we could. And so those seem to be maybe opportunities for implementation of some of these different strategies as well, as you're looking at programs or even frameworks or exemplars, because I think that's one of the things it was quite evident here. You went to some exemplar schools, you've seen some really good training.
Yeah, we've looked at some of the character ed work, and there certainly is a lot of similarities and crossovers. The other piece along those same lines is alignment of years ago we developed our attributes of a Greendale graduate, and there is some crossover there as well, and we've very recently talked about looking at those again and aligning them with the social emotional learning framework, we created that before really other districts were doing that, and now I think we have more information about how we might align some of those things, but it's all so similar. And the other thing that you can't separate is social emotional learning and equity.
Yes.
Either.
Yeah, and I love the co-creation approach. I think that's the right approach. I mean, when you look at the things that actually work and stick, is the ownership, I think, is a little bit different than if you said, hey, implement this from a student perspective. So thanks for taking on the not so easy tasks and doing the work to really be the exemplars for your peers to come every single year.
Well, and if I could add, Annie, you touched on a little more, but both of you, I think, through just sharing with us, you were able to give examples of how this actually has impacted you personally. And as Colleen, as you mentioned, possibly moving down the road, we'll hear back from some more students. Because I think, as you said, Annie, for one, I see both of them a lot of times when we're on the weekends, we're getting ready for the week, and you were both studying the other day, and I would have had no sense that you were really stressing out, but then from what you just said, you were able to use some of these strategies, and I think just hearing you say that you're able to implement that, my hope is that for all students that they're able to do that, and so I appreciated both of you sharing tonight, because that kind of gives us a sense on how this can be gauged. So thank you.
Well, and also thank you to you. The peer leaders are really grateful to the wonderful staff members that we have as part of this, and I think that's the collaboration that we have is what makes this program really special. So thank you for the time and effort that you put into it as well.
Absolutely. It's been, I've been able to participate here and there, and it's really amazing to watch. So, yeah.
Did you went off grounds for this training, correct? Is this
We used the St. Al's Community Center.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Because we needed a large space. And then I came to one of their planning meetings, which we started by, they start out with something fun, they do some sharing, and then they do some work. We started out, we were over there, and you partnered up with somebody, then you went to opposite sides of the room and you closed your eyes. Oh, you decided on an animal noise, right? And then you went to opposite sides of the room and you had to close your eyes and find your partner.
Oh, nice.
Making an animal noise. So it was
awesome.
Talk about getting out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
So
And being vulnerable.
That's right.
Is there any thought to pursuing any kind of DBT curriculum, dialectical behavior therapy? Seems like it would build off this pretty well.
I'm not familiar with curriculum, DBT curriculum. I'm familiar with DBT therapy.
Right.
And I think that some of our pupil services team have some experience with that, and they may use that to some extent. I think we'd just have to investigate whether or not that moves more into a therapeutic approach beyond what a school would be providing.
The Jefferson School District uses it.
Who uses it? Do you know?
Within the Jefferson School District, specific schools?
No, I mean, are the pupil services team members?
Are in charge of their program.
Okay, that would be interesting to learn more about.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I played phone tag with that person today. I wanted to get specifics before tonight, but I wasn't able to.
I do know that, for example, Aaron at the middle school and Trish Kilpin are familiar with it. We purchased a resource book about it just this school year.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful considering as Thor mentioned, the troubling data that obviously we see. Is there specific data collected on this program that we can compare one year versus the other in terms of the student body beyond surveys?
You mean sources of strength?
Yeah.
We,
In other words, how do we know it's working? How do we know one year is better than the other?
I think that's one of the reasons that we'll be examining social emotional learning assessment tools, as we don't have, we have the YRBS, we have other.
We have a student engagement.
And we have academic achievement. I mean, we anticipate it will have a positive impact on all of those things. Some of that will be correlational, not causation, but those would be the things that we would look at for certain, because we already have those. But we have, we will eventually be selecting another, so there are universal screening tools that we could use to examine those things with students as well.
Thank you. And lastly, are any plans to train support staff in these areas?
And they've been included in all of the professional development that we've offered. And we do have some support staff. For example, one of the peer advisors is the guidance secretary.
Great.
I mean, the adult advisors. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
One other random note of last week I was in San Francisco with a advisory panel that's developing a next-gen assessment for Project Lead the Way. And one of the things that they're going to be extracting from assessment is all of the SEL components that tie into that. So the transportable skills, as they call them, versus the soft skills. And so they're actually going to kind of highlight as part of that, and they're building constructs around each one of those different areas with experts from across the country. So some really cool, fun conversations over 3 days that I was able to participate in at Berkeley, and then with 23 other experts from across the country. And this one was focused on creativity and critical thinking, but they're doing it on all different aspects of that. So I'll keep you all abreast of more to come on that, but they're really trying to turn assessment on its head a little bit, which would be a fun way to kind of incorporate this more holistically versus, here's an assessment that we're going to tie in with a survey or some other component, but could it tie into something else that's already happening within the classroom? So.
That would be great.
All right. Any other comments? Please.
Back to what you were saying about measuring, the effect of sources of strength. I think that's something that has just kind of come to my mind, is having students compile their own personal testimonial of the effect of sources of strength. And because, as we said before, if you look at the lunch tables or whatever, when you walk into a sources of strength meeting, you can really see how each group and social group and whatever is represented within the group. So I think that having those testimonials could be a really good measure of the effects of it, because obviously if we have representation from each social group, then we can see where it is effective and where it isn't, and where we can grow. Because if we encourage students to focus on the positive parts but also where we can improve, then that won't get lost in our big group meetings. So
that's a great suggestion.
It's good comment. All right, then continuing on with the agenda, next item on the agenda is the professional development.
So in 2017-18, during the 2017-18 school year, we developed a professional development framework that we called the Strategic Learning Plan for Teachers. And the purpose of that was to guide professional development in alignment with our strategic plan. So that is linked, and you saw that linked in the report, and is put in front of teachers on a regular basis as we're talking about why and making decisions. So there are 5 areas of strategic learning for our teachers. The first is project-based learning, which you've heard a lot about this year. That's very specifically named in the strategic plan. The second is workshops, which is part of personalization. So project-based learning is specifically mentioned in the strategic plan as a methodology to personalize learning. And the reading and writing workshop is another way to personalize learning that's a very focused and specific tailored form of project-based learning, but that's not what they call it. The other area is equity through inclusive processes, so that sense of belonging and engagement for all students. And then we have 2 that are part of using data to improve and technology integration. So just to walk you through how we go about planning for professional development. So what you saw in the report was a series of tools that we use for delivery methods for professional development. In deciding what's offered in that professional development, we're following this continuum of learning for each of the priority areas. So for project-based learning, our goal is to move teachers towards implementation. And so some of the early stuff that we were doing around professional development was building awareness and understanding of what project-based learning is. This school year, a lot of our teachers that have the initial training and understanding are applying for the first time, and some have really moved into implementation, which is what you heard at the last board meeting around project-based learning, where they were talking about examples of implementation and how they were moving forward on that continuum. So we have universal professional development that happens for all teachers throughout the year. So this year at the elementary level, there were 2 professional development days where project-based learning was the focus, and we were really focusing on that application to implementation phase as we were reflecting on projects and doing some work in that space. In the summer, teachers have a lot more choice, but we're focusing their choices by working within these frameworks of the strategic learning plan. So we have a series of workshops that are highlighted as project-based learning workshops. So, for example, one of the project-based learning workshops is around making products public, which is one of the essential elements of the 8 essential design elements, and how do you use technology to make products public. And you saw Lee Burish present on that with how she made the projects public through the Google Sites and through video voiceover that students created. So she and one of her team members are going to present how you go about using that tool to make products public as a workshop over summer. So I just wanted you to see how the teacher strategic learning plan is really helping us to design not just required learning, but also choice learning, so that teachers have that ability to make choices in their own learning to move along that continuum. This continuum is also presented at staff meetings. So as the principals are working through, it's time to set your goals for the school year. We have a scorecard for the superintendent. The principals and all of the administrators are supporting that scorecard with our own goals, and teachers as well through their SLOs and their PPGs are supporting the school goal, which in turn supports the district goal. So each of the principals at some time in September or October reviewed this continuum and talked about their focus on that continuum of what they valued, so that as teachers were setting their student learning objectives and their professional practice goals, that these were fresh in their mind and they're choosing one of these continuums to really focus their learning for the year. In addition, when we're calibrating for our observations within educator effectiveness, so every teacher is observed in a summative year 3 times informally, 1 time formally. Some of these components of strategic moves that teachers make in implementation of the workshop or of project-based learning are on their radar and areas that they're commenting on and providing feedback on and suggestions for improvement when they're doing those formal observations and having conversations. So in addition to what you're seeing about the structures for delivery of professional development, there's a backside where there's some coaching happening from the principals and administrators who are evaluating teachers, and it's informing goal setting and observations. Last year, you heard a little bit about the learning walks that were happening at the elementary level, where teams were going out and then they were noticing things. There have been fewer of those this year, and we want to refresh those and make sure that we have those happening more frequently. But one of the things that they're doing is they're doing that learning walk in a different way. So, for example, with the workshop this year, one of the schools is looking at components of the workshop that are missing. So at the beginning of the year, as we were looking at the implementation and we were looking at the routines and the rituals within the classroom, and we were talking about the share time. So here, small group work, schedules, conferences, and share time. There's 3 points in the workshop in which the entire class is taught. The mini lesson, which our teachers do religiously and faithfully. The mid-workshop interruption, where they just interrupt the class in the middle and say, hey, I've noticed, and this is where you can go, and they redirect the reading and the focus in the reading. And then at the end of the workshop, they will call it together, do a quick share time. What was happening is teachers were forgetting that mid-workshop interruption and that share time at the end. That was noticed in the learning walks that were done last year. So as we were looking at the goals for the school year on the scorecard, and we were looking at improving reading performance, one of the things that was discussed is one of the potential causes or one of the potential strategies was to make sure that every time that we are teaching the whole group those 3 strategies in the workshop were being executed. So our classroom teachers have been self-monitoring every day. Did I do the mid-workshop interruption? Did I do the sharing? And they're collecting it on a form, and what we've learned as they're looking at it, they recognize that in the first month of school, one of the schools said 60% of the time, we're doing the mid-workshop interruption and the end of workshop sharing time. So our goal is to increase that to 80%. So 80% of the time we want to do that. And so they continue each month to track, are we doing that? So in some way, that is coming back and measuring, are we doing what is fidelity, or are we fully implementing what we said we're going to be doing, that we've learned how to do? And as of the middle of the year, we were seeing that they were at about 78%. 78% is a really specific number, but in fact, that's where they were because they are tracking how many days that they were doing it, multiplied by the number of teachers in the school. So just a little bit of information on how we're kind of checking back to make sure that we're making progress on this continuum within the framework. So the summer workshops opportunities and summer cohorts are out. You see that we're offering Project-Based Learning 101 again this summer. To date, we have 9 teachers registered, so we're going to give a little push to get the rest of them out there. And then we have AVMR, which is a math support, deepening of understanding that in that space for supporting math learning. And then there was a reading one as well that's being offered by the Teachers College, but at this time all of the teachers are on a wait list because it's full. So those are the cohorts that are being offered, and then we have quite a few workshops that you had a chance to see in the summer professional learning that they got on the first Friday in April and then again last Friday. So they'll be registering for workshops soon. And with that, I'll take questions.
Comments or questions?
The different continuums, are those things that were kind of crafted specifically, how did those come about, I guess?
So there's quite a few districts that will have what they call a playbook. Mm-hmm. And so when Vision 2020 was established, we went back to say, what can teachers do? What playbook do they have? And the curriculum facilitators really examined some of the language. So there were a couple of things that evolved from the teachers in terms of how they'd be motivated to practice. So a lot of the models that we looked at, they'd be columns of 1, 2, 3, 4. And the teacher said, you know what? A playbook makes me feel like if I don't do it, I'm going to be fired, and there's a lot of pressure to do it immediately. So what they talked about was a saturation of color, a continuum from awareness to implementation rather than these numbers that make them feel graded and scored. And they'll move faster through the continuum when they're seeking to implement and be at a saturation of color. So these all came from the research and the professional development that we knew was coming. So you see the 8 essential design elements which come out of the Buck Institute, and so the saturation of color is when we're there, and then it was developed from there. So it's research-based, but this is our language in terms of what's expected.
No, and it was really nice to see the consistency, too, across the different approaches, right? So you have workshops, which obviously are some adaptation of project-based learning, or this is something that you want to look for. How does that translate to this, essentially the rubric, right? Here's where you are, here's where you're maybe going.
Yeah, this is essentially a rubric for teacher implementation of specific tools, but it is less threatening to call it pattern of development in a continuum, and that was by teacher feedback that we designed it that way.
And I like the freedom of, I guess, being innovative once you get to the implementation strategy, because it's now you feel comfortable, you know what you're kind of doing, you're bringing that student choice into the conversation. So yeah, it's.
So one thing I noticed were, and I know it's a difficult thing in the summertime because obviously teachers' schedules are all over. How do you go about determining when these offerings are going to be, and do you survey them to find?
Yeah, we surveyed teachers in February knowing it was going to be a short summer. We typically offer the workshop week the week before, the Meet Your Teacher and the opening day. But knowing that that was going to put them in the first week of August, we surveyed teachers. We gave them the option of the week after school let out, the week of August 5th, or the week of August 12th, and gave them some information on what was there. The week of August 12th was 50% of the staff voted for that. 35% voted for the week school let out, and so that's why you see a cluster of 2 days in June and 2 days in August.
I didn't want to make that inference myself, but I was looking at it and thinking that you probably gathered some information.
Yeah, so we surveyed teachers, and I have a feeling that once they figure out that they can't get into their classrooms until the 12th, they're going to regret not picking the week of the 5th, but I did ask.
This is, I do like the layout of this, and it's just, it really, I mean, it kind of gives you that progression and gives you an understanding of how this all works and where you get from point A to point D, if you will, or, yeah, B, C, D. But I think it's the visuals that I'm seeing here, as an educator myself, I think this is really kind of spells it out. So thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, thank you. So last week, we had a presentation from Highland View with inclusion, and the special ed teachers obviously were a big part of that. In the elementary level, I know a big issue in our schools is our special ed teachers having collaboration time with regular ed. So where do we stand for next year, or what efforts are being made so that they have that collaboration time with the regular ed teachers?
That's a good question. There's a couple of things that happen, not just with special education, but there are blocked times for our reading interventionists and our math interventionists that once every 4 weeks or every 6 weeks that there is this common collaboration time that they're using a format for, but you've talked more with special education in terms of that shared learning time.
A lot of it will hinge on the schedule, the special schedules. So as those get laid out, that shows us where we'll have that opportunity. It's a challenge because they will. Our numbers are such that our special ed teachers, although their caseloads are low, relatively low compared to our neighboring districts, or certainly at the lower end of those, they may still have multiple grade levels, right? Because a teacher may only have 6 students, or 6, 7, 8. That's not a big caseload, not an overwhelming caseload, but that might be at 2 grade levels or 3 grade levels. So it's a challenge that we're always trying to solve, and much of it will, as I said, it will revolve around the special schedules.
And there is the way that. So at the secondary level, the school day is longer, and so there's more planning time built between the beginning of the student day and the end of the student day, whereas the elementary schedule is shorter.
Right.
Then an elementary day is shorter than a middle school or a high school day, and so one of their planning periods is within the time frame that students are in school, but the other planning period, if you look at the traditional sense of planning periods, is before school or after school, and so those are obstructed by student contact, but those times do fill up with meetings and other things that are there. But technically at the elementary level, that before school is part of their built-in planning time.
And they do use it that way.
Okay. So John, what you're hearing is that there's no easy answer in terms of trying to build in that collaborative planning time. What a lot of districts have done is they've gone to an early release, late start type of model that allows for that collaborative planning time among teams, and you do some sort of rotation then every week, and maybe a different team that you're responsible for. But without some of that, it's a matter of really taking a look at the time we do have and trying to squeeze it in there, given a lot of other variables that are tough to navigate through as well.
You did touch on something that I was always curious with, and I'm not suggesting this, but has Greendale ever had an early release?
We had an early release and we had a late start for a long period of time, and about 6 years ago we adjusted the calendar, and in so doing surveyed parents, and parents said if we leave our house we want our kids there all day. This early release, late start is very difficult for us, and that's when we shifted our schedule to have 6 full days, where if students come to school, they're here for the full day. The only half day that exists at the elementary and the middle school level is the last day of school. Otherwise, it's a full schedule. And that was because parents say it's very difficult for us to find childcare, transportation, all of these things with this disruptive thing. They also said, we like our days off to be attached to a weekend, so we're very careful not to schedule like a random Wednesday. So we could resurvey parents, but I'm betting that didn't change.
No, and it wasn't my suggestion either.
All right, thank you. I think I heard a couple of things that I want to call out that I thought was great is that, we started off with the 2020 vision, and, the vision is established and that people's, teachers' goals are aligned to that. So I think that alignment is key. So I'm glad to see that we're doing that. And then you touched upon, some of the walkthroughs and some of the observations that are happening, and I think that's key as well because, teachers are going, we need to close that loop, whether the teacher is sitting in a cohort or something else. I think it's a good opportunity for those observations or those walkthroughs to get the feedback and close a loop and seeing is that project-based learning or whatever the technology or whatever the training is, has that been implemented, and has it become institutionalized? Is it just something that we do now? So I think those are key things. Do you have a sense for how much of the training that the teachers are getting is done internally versus going external?
Yeah. We do big stuff externally. So Teachers College Reading and Writing, we've done external because that's a very specific research-based instructional model, and in order to do it to fidelity, it is critical that we have that directly from the source. So Teachers College is one of our main sources. The second one that we go outside for is project-based learning for the initial. We've invested in the Buck Institute and decided last year that we were going to partner with them. So the Buck Institute is providing PBL 101 in August, and we have several coaching days, so sustained support visits from the Buck Institute. And the third vendor that we, for equity, we have a framework where we've moved and done a lot internally, but our initial training around integrated comprehensive systems came directly from the authors of the framework, and you participated in that as well. Well, some of you did. It's only been like 18 months. It feels like longer. So those we go outside for. And then what happens is we start to develop internal expertise to expand that. Sure. So teachers will travel and may get additional training. They may have some university credit or some expertise coming from that space. And sometimes what we'll see is that we'll go outside for awareness, understanding, and application. But as we move from application to implementation, some of those pioneers are figuring out more specific targeted strategies that work for me here locally, and so I'm going to show you what I'm doing, like the Making Products Public workshop that's being offered. I figured out how to do this, and I'm going to show you a very specific tool that you can use to enhance your implementation once you have the solid foundation of structure. We used to do a lot less external. We used to try and do a lot internal, and I think that prohibited some of our growth And so that having solid research-based instructional models delivered from a professional organization that's done a lot of research in that space is valuable to advancing our goals.
Do you have teachers, because you, obviously, that was a question I was thinking of too. Do some of the teachers actually seek you out to offer, or are you reaching out to specific staff?
Both.
You are doing both?
Yep. If you have something to share, please tell me. I give them a couple spaces where they can do that. I talk with the facilitators about what's happening and the principals, what's happening in your school that's worth sharing and spreading. And then some raise their hand and say, I found this really awesome training. Can I go to that? And then I'll deliver when I come back. So they'll ask to go off and see Jennifer Saravallo, who is a descendant of the Teachers College, who does a lot of work around strategies for reading instruction. So they'll, if there's local things, they'll ask to go, and then they'll bring their expertise from that learning back.
In like a general guesstimate, where would you say we kind of sit right now within these 4 different buckets across all different areas? You know, is it, are we?
Yeah,
25,
project-based
25?
learning, our teachers are between understanding and application. Our elementary is is more in the application space with a couple implementation, but the majority applying. And our secondary is, our middle school is definitely application with some really far along in the implementation. And our high school is, we understand what it is and we're ready to start training. So that's project-based learning. If we look at reading and writing workshop, at the elementary level, this is full-blown implementation, and they're refining that skill. You can expect to see it in every classroom every day. At the middle school level, they're in an understanding space in terms of the workshop implementation. They've more heavily invested in project-based learning. And at the high school, workshop has not been an area that they've trained in other than the English team. And they are just starting their way on that journey. Equity through inclusive practices. A lot understand, and there's still some reluctance at times, like they don't believe that's really possible. But then we have pockets of strong implementation at all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And that's what you saw with the co-teaching. We've also made some improvements around equity of access to our classes, increased proportionality, if you will, in our classes by making some progress in this space, but we're really all over the map with the equity through inclusive practice. No one's in awareness anymore. I think most of them are in understanding or beyond. And then the other spaces, I could continue, but.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next item is the student board member report.
Hello.
So we all have a copy of the presentation.
Right.
Hey, Ray, can you switch to Chromecast? Thank you.
Are we able to get it where Chromecast for our computers or our student accounts?
Yeah, are you on public?
Yeah.
Then no. Did you want to share with me to broadcast?
Okay, yeah.
Look at that intersection.
That's what they call spaghetti bowl.
Yeah.
Just missing the meatballs.
Okay, share it with you.
We're waiting. Did you guys see the spider come down from the ceiling?
No.
I saw you and Colleen
Where
kind
did
of.
it land on?
Kim?
It was
Kim, you didn't even notice.
I didn't even know.
We're okay. It's under my shoe right now. So we're all right.
Thanks for
Was that
protecting
while
us.
she was
Thanks for
presenting?
saving me.
Well, she was
Oh,
presenting.
good.
Did you see it come down?
I didn't know, but I saw your foot.
I saw you guys looking at stuff.
Bring Charlotte's web to life.
Look as it was going.
I thought it was a piece of dust at first.
Creepy.
It's
really
a
creepy.
spider. All right, sorry about
Sure
that.
there'll be many more when the renovations.
Right.
That's true. All kinds of critters.
Okay, so aside from our work with the student equity team and with Sources of Strength and our usual
student council involvement. This year we kind of had two focuses, one being volunteer club, and then Annie's going to talk to you a little bit about color guard and some student needs around wanting gym credit for participation in color guard. And then obviously one of our goals was to maintain student communication and to improve that, which I think we definitely saw by being in the student equity group and sources of strength, just seeing more and more perspectives. And yeah, so first off, volunteer club.
Okay, so if I can jog all your memories to last year, and for our new board members, last year our student board member, one of our projects was implementing the Laude system. So that's a system that's currently in place now for graduation, and it's an honor system based off of participation in higher level classes as one of the components, other components being GPA and things like that, and performance in those classes, just coming from a main student complaint or issue that students felt as though, yeah, we have our GPA, but because it's not weighted, that we don't really get a bunch of recognition for challenging ourselves and maybe doing a little worse in classes like that are really hard for us. And then so as part of that, we were trying to implement things that would make our, as we talked about tonight, like an ideal Greendale graduate. And so we had a lot of long conversations about how can we implement like volunteering and service work as something that's really important to us as a Greendale graduate? Is that something that fits in the system? And eventually we had to make the decision that it doesn't really, just logistically, it was really hard to implement in that system. And it was hard to make we didn't want it to just be like, if you weren't in NHS, then you didn't really have the opportunity to be in this system. And it was just really, it didn't really fit well in that system. So this year is kind of an expansion of that, because we wanted to continue on that goal of having volunteering and service work be a central part of Greendale students' lives. And we didn't see, like when Emma and I were talking at the beginning of the year, we didn't really see any space between students who were in NHS where they're required to do 50 service hours a year, and students who don't, other school communities don't have a lot of like formal, just like service work focus. So students would either be getting that from a different community event, or they just weren't getting that at all. So that's why this year we made our main focus volunteer club. So our goals for that, we really sat down and we're really strategic about our goals, because again, we're in talking about a new club and a new organization that we really want to be like a central part of what people are thinking about. We don't want it to graduate out when we leave. We want it to be something that really stays around. So our goals were to create a club that really presents students with opportunities. So they weren't really getting opportunities from anywhere unless they were in NHS. So to really show them opportunities around our community and beyond of where they can get their service work. Encouraging students to really find their passions through volunteering. So this is another place where we connected with kind of the ideal Greendale graduates, where we really looked into what the people in the club, where their career interests were and passions were, and then are trying to develop group opportunities and some individualized opportunities based off of that. To really just help people figure out their passions through service work. And then we wanted to, again, as I mentioned, really design that strong structure to make sure it doesn't graduate out. And then really connecting students with opportunities that align with their desired career path to make it a more strong-knit community, and as well as just making it something that really strengthens and benefits their life.
Yeah, so something kind of exciting that happened. When we first started off the club, we got featured in our school's Outlook. And so that was really exciting for me, because I realized that people were kind of talking about it, and it really got the word out. So as Annie had mentioned, one of our goals with creating this club was to kind of give teachers a place for kids to go during that ACP time. A lot of kids were saying, well, okay, this is great. I have my list of interests and what kind of career would suit me, but where can I get these experiences? And so something that I think I want to work on next year is to really share this information with teachers to encourage kids to start volunteering in their desired career cluster. But at our second meeting, we administered a student survey, and the results that we got back were just kind of giving us a look at what kind of career clusters kids were interested in. And then from there, we also asked what ideas do you have and what can we start looking into for you and your specific needs. Yeah.
Right, and then so far what we've been up to is we started by meeting with Mr. Galante and just talking about our activity, and he directed us to trying to find an advisor to work with it full time. As we kind of talked about with Source of Strength, that's a really strong way to make sure that your club maintains its growth over years throughout like different generations of Greendale graduates. Then we found an advisor, Miss Salas. She's lovely, and she was really enthusiastic to be coming in and talking about this. And so we were able to share our visions with the club with her. Then in addition to that, Emma and I are both involved in NHS, so we wanted to make a connection between those two clubs. We had also seen the issue where in NHS, a lot of times it's a great club structure, but it's taking like 50 of the most involved kids in a grade because you have to be really involved to be able to get in, and then adding 50 hours of volunteering to their time. So it doesn't, a lot of the times, there'll be times where we have community members come to us with an opportunity and nobody takes it because it's like, oh, well, you know, it's AP exam week, or it's, you know, like, so we have a lot of the same type of students who are volunteering there, so we really wanted to get more of the school involved so we weren't turning away so many community opportunities. And so we also brainstormed the structure with them to really get an indication of how to get kids really involved and excited about this. And then we designed a club structure that would incorporate leadership. So we wanted to get some strong underclassmen leaders in this to feel like they could really shape the club. The structure of it is a lot more open so that we can kind of, we're constantly asking for feedback, and we have people who are coming up with their own ideas and own things, and that's how we want to sort of shape this club. And then we did talk about like aligning with career clusters. And then we've just been continuing regular school year meetings. And in the beginning, obviously, we were doing a lot of recruitment. We really wanted to recruit a lot of underclassmen to kind of put this as something that's in the front of their mind, because a lot of people didn't realize until, you know, you're applying for college or you're moving on to the rest of your life and you're like, oh, I completely forgot about that huge aspect of my life that a lot of people value and that I could have really gotten a lot out of. So we really want to bring those benefits to the forefront of their high school experience rather than it being something that they might look back and regret not doing so much of.
Yeah, so from there, our next steps are to meet with our peer leaders in the club. So a challenge that we have ran into while creating a new club is inspiring kids to want to be like us, to want to be a leader and have to do the grunt work, kind of. It's hard to be like, yeah, don't you want to make slideshows and organize this club when you have a group of kids that really just want to volunteer and really just want to have the fun and build those relationships. So that's something that we ran into, and we did get one application for a student leader, so I'll be working with her next year as Annie goes off to college. But yeah, next year for sure, one of our big goals is to encourage the leadership aspect of the club, and so it'll be a lot easier because next year is a new school year, and so while kids are building their schedules and figuring out what they have time for, this can be one of their priorities, whereas starting a club second semester, it's a little bit tricky because you already have your priorities for the year, and it's hard to fit in something that you don't really know about yet. And then we want to continue brainstorming career-focused opportunities. Right now, our big focus, I think a lot of the kids that have been coming to meetings are interested in, is the STEM field. And I have a lot of different ideas for that. Annie and I both volunteer with Miss Hom, doing research with the DNR with salamanders. And so we've been trying to spark interest with that, with the kids that have been showing up to meetings. And then also volunteering at St. Luke's is something that I did last summer, and I'm going to be encouraging kids to join me this summer. We're going to continue to hold our regular meetings and hopefully have other members share their experiences in front of the whole group, to just build transparency within the group and kind of encourage everybody to know what our group stands for, and to kind of let everybody else take control and make the group what they want it to be instead of us telling them what it is. And yeah, and continue to build relationships just through volunteering. So something that we kind of took from NHS is just how we communicate with the club. And so what we use is like a remind messaging app. And so how it works is you just schedule when you want a text to send out, and then it makes it really easy to get volunteer information out there really fast, and kids can respond and say, oh, like that date works for me, what are the details on this, and so on. Another thing that we got from our student survey was to build a communal Google Calendar. So that's something that I actually worked with Mr. Geiger on. Well, I talked to him about it briefly, to build a Google Calendar that could be shared with everyone and make communication a lot faster and easier.
Yeah, and then something that's cool with the Remind too is like after I send out texts, a lot of times, because it's set up with like my account, I'll get an email and it's like, oh, like this new person joined, who haven't been showing up to meetings, but like, you know that they're seeing the text that other people have, and they're like, oh, you know, you should sign up for this, you should like whatever. So you can really just kind of see how it's growing through the Remind texts. I just thought that was kind of cool. And then for our other focus this semester, this one's a little bit more brief, but a student approached me with a request of making color guard option for a gym credit. So what we did first was we met with the band director and the color guard director to be able to talk to them about some of the challenges with that and what that would really look like. I had brought up the co-curricular codes of like what happens when you violate certain rules, when something qualifies as a sport, or like something that would have the gym credit, so they're aware of how it could avoid some people from competing at certain times in certain circumstances, and they decided to move along with it. They encouraged us to keep with this project. Then with that, we also did some research with comparable districts to be able to find out like what policy like this would look like. So we found a lot of promising policy design in Southern schools. Southern schools are really intense about marching band. So we found that there were like entire states, I believe, I don't know which state it is now, but there's a state in the South where that like is a statewide policy that color guard and marching band count as a gym credit, and they have like a similar program with ours. So we're hoping to possibly build upon that, and then the student and I also met with administration, with Mr. Lotus basically, and we're just talking through some of the challenges and strengths of this. And he basically told me that the next step for this would just be presenting it here to all of you, and then making it maybe a possible topic for a policy meeting. I know that the student involved in this would be willing to present. He's said, and he's very passionate about this, so just any further feedback on that would be great. And that's pretty much it. That's what we've been up to. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free.
Per usual, you two do a great job in what you present. So how many members of the volunteer club for next year?
I think we're at about 12 or 13 right now.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But as Annie said, more kind of join the Remind group and aren't showing up consistently to meetings. So that's promising.
And then we also forgot to mention, so like as part of what Emma was saying with joining a club in the beginning of the school year, we also went to the 8th grade transition night. And we got like, I forget I mean, obviously you can't like base things off of that because people will go and like sign their name on a bunch of things and get really excited, but like not really follow through. But we got like 30 names at the transition night, which was really cool. It was kind of nice because parents were also there. So we did have a lot of people who their parents were kind of like, hey, sign up for that. Like, so we'll see if there's any growth from that, but that was really promising. And so I'm really optimistic for the future of it.
I just want to thank you both. You're so not only articulate, but you're involved in so much at the school that it's a real asset, not just to the school, but to the community. In looking at this, just the way you laid it out with some of your graphics and your whole action plan and everything is just really impressive. And so I just want to compliment you on that first and ask you how we as a board can maybe help support some of this, because one of the things you just mentioned is maybe policy, and Mr. Misko and I are both the nerds that are on the policy committee, so we love this kind of stuff. But we'd like you to think about ways the board can help support you in some of this, because it's not going to be something that you'll be able to do, obviously, just on your own. You've already been meeting with Mr. Lotus, and so, as you're thinking ahead, or even now, if there's anything that comes to mind, please let us, and I don't want to speak on behalf of all of us, but I think in just listening to what you're saying here today, I think there's real merit in what you offered us tonight. So I just want to thank you. The volunteer thing has always been something that Greendale has prided itself on, but I think, to step forward, how you're even thinking about next year, starting the year off with some of these opportunities, Emma, as you said, I think is real important, because as people got involved more, they probably aren't really putting that at the front of their radar. So I just want to thank you and see how we can help support you.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. I think, yeah, definitely we've just been brainstorming a lot of ideas for next year, so we'll keep in touch with all of you about what we're coming up with that. Obviously, we've kind of changed the structure of the student board position this year as just based on kind of the way that it fed from the Laude system, but Emma and I have been meaning to kind of consolidate our ideas into something that we could share out with you a little more concisely, but I appreciate that opportunity to get that conversation going.
Excellent report. I'm just very impressed with how you do things, and I've watched you when I've been out in the audience, and I'm certainly listening to you now, and you do a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
If there's one of the things I was thinking about too with the volunteer group is the community partnership team that we have, and so that's a group of folks that are working around some of the career pathways. And I know we probably need a little breathing a little bit more life in that. And I'm supposedly the leader of that group, so I can help with that. But if there's something that we can do to connect the volunteer piece to the career clusters and the career pathways, work that's happening with the groups we're bringing in, think about that as another opportunity that maybe we can leverage that group.
Could I ask one question?
Please.
One of the graphs you had, it's up there, and you don't have to pull it up again, but there were only 4 areas that seemed to be highlighted. Did that mean that none of the other areas I was looking at, like business and marketing and all that, was there anyone that showed interest in any of those areas, or?
No. We only had 11 responses for that, so.
Okay.
But this was just with the club members?
Yeah, that was just
with the club
yeah.
members.
But the distribution, the rank order is consistent with the whole school.
I was going
the
to say,
overall
the
population.
school would have something is it Career Locker or whatever, the
Career cruising.
Career
Yep.
Cruising, that would see
And
what
the rank order,
breakdown is.
the rank order was consistent. The proportions weren't quite there, but close.
Well, one area that I just kind of happened to glance at the most was the education one, and I know that we're doing our work with UW-Milwaukee right now, so it appears that there would be some opportunities for volunteerism along with that aspiring educators, that they could actually go right into their career cluster that way too. So.
Yeah, definitely. And in Greendale, we love combining club motives. So we are definitely looking at that and seeing what we could do with Educators Rising and really connecting with some of those. Because I know that they have a lot of staff leadership that would probably be more knowledgeable on that field than Emma and I would be. But we were really looking to make some of those connections in the future, as well as with with STEM being a really high one, HOSA, the Health Organization Club, just really making those connections so that we can not only expand the service, but really get those teachers who are leading that involved as well.
Great.
Just a couple of things that came to mind as you shared your report. First of all, thank you very much. It was well done. The thing that I heard, what you said, the volunteer club, and I think we talked a little bit about it when the students from the exchange program talked about the international club. I just want to commend the administration for being receptive to new ideas and working with the students. So as students have new ideas and say, let's form this club, I think that's important. And I want to just acknowledge, Mr. Galante and Mr. Lotus for working with the students. And as there's a need, working to develop that with the students and figuring out, okay, how do we expand this? How do we take this from an idea and execute on it? So I think that's a great idea, or that's great work there. And secondly, and I think you heard it from many of the board members, just the work that you put together here. This is a great example of lifelong skills that you're going to take with you beyond Greendale, and how to assess a situation, how to come up with ideas, how to assimilate data and present it. So nice work on all that, and it's exciting to see that you're taking not only what you're learning in the classroom, but working through some of those things as representatives of your classes. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, then we are at the end. Any questions or comments from visitors this evening?
Hi, this is Mew. I want to say congratulations for making to the U.S. News and report of the best high schools of all Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulate. I want to congratulate you a lot.
Thank you very much.
And two, with the, I think that I read the entire Constitution of the United States of America, and I think that it's a big good idea when you do the 8th grade transition, that to tell the students that and since you need to start instituting for the high school that as I said before, there was those extended field trips, unless you have a sponsor paying for the whole thing on your family's behalf, some from unrelated, that your hotel bill has to be your permission slip and say that this is required under Article 1, Section 9 of our Constitution to do this, thanks to the Aboriginal children out there. And just a reminder to you that this is also required under Article 6 of our Constitution of this country.
All right, thank you. All right, then we are adjourned, and our next board meeting is in 2 weeks on Monday, May 20th.
Oh, yeah.